Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with a Hong Kong content review, diving into the period piece martial arts extraordinaire from the Shaw Brothers Library. After diving into martial arts of Shaolin with Jet Li, doing a bit of a period piece kind of Jet Li kind of focus at the moment. And while I was kind of doing that, I noticed the second film on that disc was The Barefooted Kid, which is a remake of The Disciples of Shaolin, which I do own on the 80th film edition, which is directed by Johnny To. This one is directed by Chang Cheh, which is the legendary Hong Kong director, Shaw Brothers director, done some seriously impressive films, so many films under his belt, so many yet to check out. Probably a really happy day when I managed to check out all of his movies eventually on his library, or all of his movies actually getting an actual Blu-ray release or high quality release. That would be something quite special, being the fact he's done so many goddamn films. And this one I was very curious to check out, The Barefooted Kid and this film, and I figured good opportunity to watch both and compare and contrast, similar to what I did with the Boxer from Shantoon and the remake version Hero, released by 88 Films not too long ago. And I really enjoyed both films for different reasons. And this is got a feeling going to be the same kind of thing. I'm very curious to see what the remake does. But for today's video, we're talking about The Disciples of Shaolin and diving straight into this one, released in 1975, starring our two major characters. We have Alexander Fungsheng. Can't quite pronounce the second name, but he is a brother character, which also is in the film as well. So you got both as our kind of main characters. Our main character is Alexander Fungsheng, who is coming to this town. He's an orphan, he's basically trying to find his brother. His brother's working in a kind of a textile mill. And basically, essentially the film is him reuniting with his brother and kind of working hard. And he has got a particular set of skills, a very particular set of Kung Fu skills, which have played a major role into kind of what's going to happen towards the film and the landscape of that character's kind of arc throughout this kind of nearly 2-hour movie. His brother is very reserved, very kind of closed off and cold, and happy to see his brother, but doesn't want him to use his skill set. Don't let people know that you can fight well, kind of thing, because people will exploit him, people will use you for that advantage. And you find out a bit more reason why and what his kind of motivation is. Surprisingly though, the actual brother character in the film, even though he's a seriously skilled fighter and you learn a little bit more about him, he doesn't play a major role. He kind of just allows his brother to kind of go off on one. I'm not going to stand your way. I will be falling victim to another kind of, boss, another kind of tyrant again. And, even says to him towards the middle part of the film, before you were poor, but you were yourself. Now you're just a dog, a lackey for someone else in power. And it is quite an interesting kind of, talking point and theme throughout the film. Essentially, the film itself, Disciples of Shaolin, is a big kind of, social commentary about the working class kind of men, essentially, that are falling victim to people of much higher power, much more kind of series of greed and kind of control and wealth kind of thing. And that is style mill kind of monopoly kind of takeover that's trying to happen. You got the one side, which is our bad guys, our kind of bad kind of teams who've got a series of kind of henchmen and different kind of people that are kind of trying to sway over because they want to be number one in the textile mill kind of thing. They want to own that kind of that scene, that kind of, that kind of wealth and power. And you've got the other boss side, which is essentially our good guys, air quote good guys, I don't know. The main boss of that is essentially wanted to kind of maintain his own wealth and his own status and doesn't want to kind of pay out any kind of higher wages, or he doesn't want to kind of look after his men. He only wants to support and help the living and the people that are going to help him become richer, essentially. And throughout the kind of the film, that character, the boss of the current textile mill that we're getting invested in, is essentially just a bit of a prick. He's a bit of an asshole, essentially. Someone who sways people in. He's a bit of a coward himself. He kind of sways people in with kind of wealth, position, and power, and very easy to dismiss and kind of demote people at a quick whim for people that are basically going to better himself. And he always wants to show face, but doesn't want to put in the work himself. He is kind of got to a position of power and kind of, very rich and very powerful, but he's willing to use other people for his own means. Whether this is intentional and unintentional is left with the audience to decide. And very similar to the kind of the bad guys in the sense of the film, which is using kind of intimidation, kind of scare tactics, and even as towards the start of the film, you either get the carrot or the stick, and whatever you choose, it's down to you. And the working class kind of people essentially in the middle of it, torn between the two different sides of the kind of the interactions, and even one's not really going to help you because you're going to get a beating, or you might be taken down, or you might be promised a temporary status or wealth or potentially a higher paying rise, but it doesn't really lead to much. And that's essentially what the film's trying to go about. And our main character is caught in this kind of the middle of it, essentially. He's been given a position of kind of power. He goes from this kind of very poor, doesn't have any kind of shoes on his feet. He's borrowing shoes from his brother. He eventually wants a new pair of shoes, which he earns later on by kind of standing up for his kind of morals and kind of sense of justice in a sense. The character itself is very likable, it's very fun. I've not seen this actor before. I've not seen any of the films, what he's done, which is probably a big shock to a lot of people. I know he's the main lead in the Brave Archer series, and I know he's part of a lot of the Chang Cheh kind of movies as well. So very excited to check out the very first time seeing this actor portrayed on the screen for me. And his character is really cool. It's very cheeky, he's very young, he's very fun, good spirit, very much kind of talks, very much speaks his mind, very much kind of willing to put someone else in their place, essentially, very cocky, definitely in terms of his skill set. He's young, he's ambitious, and he's willing to put the hard work into it. He's got a good spirit, and that's what I quite like. It's a hero character, a hero protagonist character that we're invested in, that we like. And even though he is a bit cocky and he just say his own way he wants to say, he's not like mean-spirited or nasty or anything. He's actually quite a nice person in terms of the character we want to get to know. He doesn't exploit people in the same ways that some of these other characters do throughout the film. He's just someone who is rising their way up the ranks through fist, as he says, kind of thing, through his kind of abilities, through his skill sets, and he's taking full advantage of it because he's never had that before within the orphanage. And he gets swept up under kind of the luxurious life of the house and then the women, and kind of like having that pocket watch with the music that he loves, and he kind of gets a bit of comeuppance with some people that kind of brought him down, but he's all in good fun and spirit, and there's some really good dialogue with that character as well, which I really appreciated, and some really good kind of smarky remarks, which I'll leave to the film itself, but it's really funny. Surprisingly, the film does have some nice light-hearted comedy moments, which I did really appreciate, and I like those really early kind of scenes towards the start of the film, especially when he's building up to his kind of fame and him taking arms from the bad guys. But things start to get a bit black and white and a bit more kind of weird as the film goes along, in terms of as his position's going up from supervisor to manager. The line between him putting himself out there for his boss becomes a bit questionable, and now it plays into the ideas of, the rich and powerful, whether it's the side, wherever side you're on, is just going to exploit you. And even when the boss, is swearing him away kind of thing, he's very much doesn't care about him. He just wants to use him to kind of show face and to kind of maintain his own kind of status, despite the fact his workers, his equipment, the people he has under his wing essentially are being very massively kind of abused, killed, hurt, or kind of having wrists broken or arms broken or even death. There's a lot that happens within that kind of textile or mill facility that we're in, and our bad guys are basically doing whatever they can to basically shut them down. And I think the social commentary is really well handled. It definitely gets very dark towards the kind of the third act of the film. It definitely gets a lot more kind of oof kind of thing. It definitely kind of subverts expectations. It definitely goes into some directions which I did see sort of coming because it has been done in other movies with Chang Cheh, especially with the fantastic boxer from Shantoon, which I think is the best version of that story of the rags to the riches kind of storyline, someone being corrupted by power and getting to a position where things start to go wrong. If you've seen that movie, for me, that's the best version of that tale. This falls into that kind of category, and it's very good. It's definitely a very well done film. My only negative I would really say about the film, I think it's just a little bit too long. I think you could easily shave about 15 minutes of the film. I think you could have made things just a little bit tighter, just in its kind of focus in certain places of the film. But despite that, it's a very entertaining film. It's a very enjoyable movie. It definitely has a bit of light-hearted comedy, a bit of good drama. I love the flashback sequences with his brother in the film, which explains why he's the way he is, and has a very kind of limited role in the film, which I think is quite interesting, especially with being central focus on his brother being kind of, going from where he is to where he ends up being in the end of the film. I think the bad guys are really fun. There's some really cool dialogue choices. The fight scenes are awesome. They're a lot of fun. Really kind of mixture of variety of locations and really hard-hitting kind of nasty kind of fights. and big group kind of sequences. There's definitely some nice kind of betrayals and backstabbing moments for sure, which I did appreciate. The film itself is very stylistic, which is no surprise because Chang Cheh knows what he's doing behind the camera, knows how to direct these scenes, knows how to get the best from his actors, from his kind of locations, and from his fight sequences. And the film has some really interesting kind of camera work and some really kind of interesting ways of telling some scenes, which I do appreciate. Some good, very clever kind of metaphors within the kind of scenes that do play out, especially with the crickets, with one of the boss characters has a sense of crickets he's kind of using to kind of win some fights, how he essentially a metaphor for how he's using his workforce, how he's using other fighters in the film to basically do his bidding, or essentially show face. It's through the blood, sweat and tears of other people that he maintains his kind of wealth, and that comes at a cost, I think, for sure, which is quite interesting. Bad guys are really fun as well. There's some very familiar faces that a lot of other people are going to recognize a lot more than probably myself. My thoughts and opinions on the film itself. What are your thoughts, guys? Please comment down below. What is your favorite Chang Cheh movie? What is your favorite version of this film? Is it the original? Is it the remake? I haven't seen the remake as of yet, but I will be curious to check it out very, very soon and to kind of report back to see if it's better, is it worse, is it kind of a mediocre one? I'm very curious. It's Johnny To. Surely it's got to be good, right? Shaw Brothers. It's a remake of the same type of story. What are they going to do to add to it to make it different? Very curious, very excited to check that one out for sure. This is the 88th film edition, part of their kind of Asian cinema kind of library. This is spine number 28 on there. This was released a little while ago, I believe. I think a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago or so. You get a slipcase there. There you go. There you go. And you get the poster, and you get the booklet as well. So meantime, guys, Amphlett Reviews, signing out.